So what might Pulte do with the power of 18 U.S. intelligence agencies behind him? Well, Trump hasn't exactly been shy about this. He already gave us a clue when he announced that one of Pulte's first tasks at DNI will be to investigate so-called rigged elections. In other words, Pulte will use the power of the nation's intelligence apparatus to push the big lie, just as the country is conducting elections that will determine control of Congress. Joining me now is one of the Trump critics that Pulte has gone after, Senator Schiff, Democrat of California, and a member of Judiciary Committee. Senator, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you since this was announced, Bill Pulte, and I've asked multiple people this, so I'm going to ask it to you. What was your reaction when you saw Donald Trump say that this man was going to be the acting head of national intelligence?
I was struck by just how in your face it is. Here he picked somebody with absolutely no national security experience, someone who is disliked both within the administration and in Congress, and he's like, I dare you to try to stop me. The only qualification I care about in this position or any other is, will he do my bidding? And the president gives it all away. He says he wants Pulte there to look into what he calls falsely the rigged election or rigged elections. And it's important for people to realize the Director of National Intelligence has no elections remit when it comes to domestic elections. They're at most, you could say that they're looking at foreign malign influence in our elections, but that's not what he's being appointed to do. In fact, the parts of the intelligence community that are supposed to focus on foreign powers interfering in our elections have been shut down by this administration. Right. So no, he wants Pulte to do the same thing that Tulsi Gabbard was doing, go on raids of ballot boxes in Georgia, or tell intelligence agencies to rewrite their conclusions to suit the president's objectives, or to misuse secret government data to weaponize it against the president's enemies. Those are his only qualifications, which obviously are no qualifications at all.
Or try to do or engage in the kind of activities that we're seeing from the man who's essentially the acting U.S. attorney in Los Angeles. You worked, of course, in the U.S. attorney's office, who has been basically going on Glenn Beck's podcast to tell people that you should send him your tips about voter fraud and announcing that there will be prosecutions in a few months about this. I mean, as someone that worked in the U.S. attorney's office, like, what is your reaction to watching this official of the Justice Department conduct himself in this way, again, when the votes are still being counted?
It's horrifying. That was my old office, the Central District of California. I spent almost 6 years there. It was a totally apolitical office. You couldn't tell when the president was a Democrat or Republican. But this guy, Bill Asalee, has made it just a partisan job to go after, any of the president's objectives and misuse the office. You started earlier with a segment about the Broadview investigation in Chicago and how grand juries are turning down Trump prosecutors, Trump U.S. attorneys. Well, Bill Asalee has gone into the grand jury with similar immigration cases and been refused by grand juries so often that behind his back in the office, they call him No Bill Asalee because he's turned down so often. And the tragic reality is it's driven about a quarter to a third of the prosecutors to leave the office. There's been a terrible drain of experienced prosecutors. And now you have the specter of not the U.S. attorney, because he couldn't get confirmed, but the first assistant, because the top two positions are unfilled, basically making a plea to the public, please send me evidence. I'm asserting there's fraud. We don't have evidence of it, but please send me something. I need to make the boss happy.
You have been one of numerous Democratic senators pushing for a war powers resolution to pass in the Senate. There's one that passed in the House to essentially require a vote on whether to continue the war. One of the arguments the administration has made is that there's a ceasefire, so there's no more war to be restrained by resolution. Of course, in the last day, we have been striking Iranian targets. We're striking them apparently right now in the last few hours. There's also reporting from Iranian state media that has appeared to be confirmed by the visual investigations team at the Times, or at least they believe it's credible, that we hit 2 drinking water facilities in Iran. Analysis satellite images suggest Iranian water facility. I mean, that seems to me if true, a grave violation of the laws of war? What's your reaction?
Well, the ceasefire argument that the administration making is just patently absurd. First of all, the ceasefire is mostly observed in the breach. Iran shot down one of our helicopters. We're attacking sites in Iran. Some may be legitimate, others may be completely illegitimate and violations of the laws of war. But there is no ceasefire. And in terms of the War Powers Act, certainly no cessation of hostilities, no removal of our forces as required by that act after 60 days. We're over 100 days now. So we actually got some of the early procedural steps undertaken in the Senate. We passed a resolution to move the bill out of committee. We have another vote that will be coming up, I hope, soon to pass that, to bring up the actual resolution, and I hope pass that as well. But also bear in mind, Chris, we've asked for the legal opinion justifying all this. What are the arguments that they're using? What are the targets that they think are legitimate? And this is the first opinion they're withholding, not just from the public, but from the Congress itself. We can't even see it in closed classified session. I'm demanding that that be released and joined by a great many of my Democratic colleagues. We obviously want to see what their arguments are, but the ones they're making in public are palpably inadequate.
Yeah, one of your colleagues, Tim Kaine, was noting that the legal rationale for the strikes on boats in the Caribbean, as dubious as may be, they have at least furnished to the Senate. That is not the case with the legal rationale for this war. Senator Adam Schiff of California. Thank you much, sir.